And hey, everybody, welcome to the Altar Podcast. We're doing a special episode. I know we usually do every 2 weeks, but we just had an urgency today to speak to the situation that's going on with Israel that everyone's aware of. And I have a friend of mine that I've known for really 2 decades, if you go back all the way, David Necrutman, who's in Israel right now, zooming in, and you can see him waving there. I'll tell you a little bit more about who he is in just a second, but a quick story. Actually, one of the first memories I have of you, I don't even know if I've told you this or if you remember it, but this is 2003-ish. You were in Clarence, New York at the Eagles Wings headquarters when I was a brand new intern there. You were up in Clarence, and it was Saturday, and I'm, a pastor's kid, grew up in the church my whole life, as spiritual as they come as far as Christians go. I had no context or understanding whatsoever of what it meant to be a Jew, the Jewish faith, the Jewish roots of my own faith. And so it's a Saturday, and Bishop Robert Stearns says, hey, David is visiting, and I want you to just spend the morning with him and, hang out. If he needs anything, just spend time with him, get to know him. So I said, great. The next thing I know, you and I are walking a mile down the road back home from the office because it was Shabbat. That is one of my first memories of you. And this, for me, you have to understand, that was brand new. I knew of Shabbat. I knew what it was, but I didn't realize there were people who actually held to it like that. And so that's one of my first memories of you is, hey, we're going to go home. All right, cool. Let's get in the car. No, it's Shabbat. Let's do the walk. But that was, I just remember that, and you may laugh about it, but that has helped since then form. That was kind of the first Jewish roots of my faith moment that I'd ever had. And it was with you walking down a road in Clarence, New York. So all that to say, we go way back.
Yes.
And now you've become...
Yes, we do.
Now you're this super important... Let me tell everyone just really quickly about some of this stuff. You've done more in your lifetime than I can even imagine, which is why I'm honored that you're on here spending time just talking about this. But David is a theologian, a writer. He's actually went to Oral Roberts University as a Jewish man and studied there. He was, back when I was talking about you from 2003, you were involved with the Israeli government and the consulate, and I remember doing work with you back then.
Yeah, Director of Christian Affairs for the Israeli Consulate in New York.
Right. That was back when I knew you. And since then, now you're the head of the Center for Jewish Christian Understanding and Cooperation.
I was former executive director for the Center for Jewish Christian Understanding and Cooperation under Or Torah Stone, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, who founded Or Torah Stone. And then from September of 2021 until now, the executive director for the Isaiah Projects, an organization dedicated to creating Hebraic roots resources for Christians to discover the roots of their faith, and humanitarian efforts as well, helping Christian Arabs in Bethlehem and single Ethiopian mothers to put food on the table.
That's awesome. And you also have a book, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's called Your Sabbath Invitation. Is that right?
That is correct.
And I want to tell everyone.
The best claim to fame for your audience really is I'm the Jewish advisor to the chosen.
Gotcha. That's amazing. I didn't know that until just now. That's awesome.
You see, there you go. I surprised Ryan.
That's it.
There.
The Jewish advisor to the chosen. Now I want to do a whole show about that and what that's like, but we have to stay on point with this. So anyway, all that to say, David knows what he's talking about. He has a very unique perspective in all of this, not just, obviously he's in Israel and living in Israel, not just from being in the land while everything is unfolding, but from a unique Christian and Jewish perspective. That's kind of what he's given his life to, is Jewish-Christian relations. So the reason that Sarah and I wanted to do this special podcast is because I wanted to address head-on and really just hear David unpack and talk about 4 specific things that I've been hearing over and over really for the past week since this situation has broken out in Israel. And they are things that I think we need to have. First of all, we need to understand, but we also need to have the language and the facts and even the biblical backing to understand the position that we're taking as I believe, unfortunately, these things, the lies and the things that are being perpetuated are probably going to get worse in the coming weeks and months, especially as Israel takes steps to defend itself. We're going to have to be more and more and more equipped, especially as Christians and specifically young Christians, to have answers that we can stand on, that are based on facts, that are based on Scripture, and not just kind of going with the flow on social media with what everyone else is saying. So let's just dive right in and hear what you have to say. The first thing that I've been hearing since this situation has broken out is and this one is pretty scary to me because I didn't realize it was still this bad in the church, but I am hearing about replacement theology. It's suddenly just in the past week, boom, come up to the surface. And replacement theology, for those of you who don't know, is a theology that says when Jesus came, that essentially the covenant that God had with Abraham and the Jewish people and Israel was replaced by the one that Jesus has with the Gentiles. And that's a very, very, very simple explanation of it, but it essentially says the church has replaced the people of Israel, and that now we're moving forward in this new covenant, and well, what happened in the past is the past, but they kind of screwed up. That's all over. Jesus came, now we're the new ones with the focus. And I'm hearing that actually against the backdrop of this conflict, Christians actually saying, well, we are in the new covenant. That's just all political stuff that's going on. It doesn't even matter because God has a covenant with us now. So can you just speak to that however you want to?
Well, let's just give the sort of the one-liner, and then we'll unpack the one-liner. If God can break his word with the Jewish people, don't think he can also break his word with the Christian world?
Right.
So let's just deal with that for a second. If God is a covenant God who keeps his word, and a covenant is an unbreakable bond, then I don't see how the church can undo that bond between God and his people. That doesn't mean that when Christians are saying they're grafted into this covenantal experience, that's a valid understanding of it. But you have to be grafted into something.
Right.
And if that bond was already broken, then with all due respect to the current Christian climate right now, who seem to be very anti-Israel and take the stance of replacement theology, don't think that Christians were really nice throughout the 2,000 years of history, that they themselves don't deserve sort of a bond-breaking moment from God. So the only thing we can rely on is God's word to his people, and that is it. And the fact remains is that for many, many centuries, Jewish people were not in Israel as far as a nation, sovereign state of Israel. The last time we had sovereignty really was 2,200 years ago in the miracle of what we call Hanukkah, when the Maccabees not only did a civil war within the Jewish people, went against the Seleucid Greek Empire, won, and reclaimed Jerusalem back again. And then, after the Second Temple was destroyed, unfortunately, we were dispersed to the four corners of the world. In the 2,000 years of that history of exile history, the church, who believed in replacement theology, thinking they're the new Jews, and since Jews are no longer in Israel, and that seems to be proof that God is done with them, at the end, we're back. Hi. This is a fact. No other people who's been divorced from their land more than 200 years was able to come back. Here it's 2,000 years, and we have returned as a sovereign state of Israel, according to all the prophecies. So if anyone's reading their Bible and talks about this ingathering of the nations, well, this is in fulfillment. We have more Jews here in Israel than any other place in the world. So for me, God is a fact, and the proof is I'm speaking to you, Ryan, today. So again, replacement theology definitely still subconsciously in the church. There are groups within Christianity that have rethought the whole concept of replacement theology, but to think somehow that God is not with us, I'm sorry to say, for the last 75 years, I'm not sorry. For the last 75 years, here's proof that the Jews are back in its land. Faith has been reinvigorated here in the land of Israel. Many Jews who have once turned away from God are now turning to God. Jews in the context of their Judaism. That does not mean that what Christians are doing is invalid in any way. There is enough room in the heart of God for all of us, and we have different expressions on how we have that relationship with God. I am fully cognizant that Christians believe in 100% of the divinity of Jesus and the 100% of the humanity of Jesus. I want Christians to be Christ-centered, but that means in the humanity of Jesus that Christians should understand the Judaism of Jesus.
Yes.
If you completely believe in the divinity of Jesus and his humanity, then you can't simply say he died as a Jew and resurrected as a Southern Baptist. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
He's Jewish all through of this. So when you're looking at the current situation, it's very perplexing that suddenly everyone is taking the side of terrorists instead of the side of the family of Jesus. So it seems like people don't like Jesus because they don't like his Jewishness. If you're an anti-Semite, you are anti-Jesus. So for me, as the church seems to continue in replacement theology and come out with really bad statements against the Jewish people, is very perplexing, because what you're saying is that the identity of Jesus doesn't matter to you. You think somehow Jesus is some type of Santa Claus dream that you made up in your 21st century understanding of Christianity, and you forgot the development of it all.
Right. Absolutely. And I can't believe, as a Christian who obviously believes in the New Testament as Scripture, you look at Romans 11. I ask people who believe in replacement theology, I say, what do you do with Romans 11, where Paul specifically says, don't boast because you've been grafted into the root. You haven't replaced it, you've been grafted in. And so I don't understand how Christians will ignore portions of our New Testament to support a theology that it just doesn't make sense. Even that's just the New Testament. I mean, forget the Bible and all the spiritual stuff. Like you said, just seeing the Jewish people back in the land for 75 years is enough to prove, okay, something's going on here that's beyond just coincidence.
Yeah. But I would say like this, again, maybe for Luke, that may be not Jewish. All the disciples are Jewish. I find it quite funny that the doctor in the group is not Jewish. But okay. Be as that may, at the end of the day, for me, for anyone to truly understand what I would call the apostolic writings, the gospel and the apostolic writings, if you don't understand the Judaism of the day, then you're losing a high definition from what you're reading. Okay? And just to understand this, okay? For the Christians, this might be a very shock. Jesus never went to a church. He went to a synagogue. In fact, he celebrated Sabbath. Most of the healings took place on Sabbath. All right? Everyone talks about the healings and the miracles, but they forget what day it took place on. Mary wasn't a Catholic. Mary was a Jewish mother. There was no New Testament at the time of Jesus or Paul. This was all written afterwards and canonized afterwards. Obviously, Paul's writing his letters, but he never anticipated that his letters would be considered sacred canon of Christian scriptures. It came about that way. So that means the only Bible in existence was the Hebrew Bible. Okay, well, that's a Jewish book, seen through Jewish eyes, that for some reason for over 2,000 years has been divorced from Christianity. It's only within this literally 75 to 100 years there has been this slow moving sort of spirit of God to awaken Christians to understand the roots of their faith. So do you want a Greek understanding of your faith, or do you want what I consider the proper understanding of your faith? And that means understanding Jews, because Jesus was a Jew. And for a Christian, is a Jew.
Absolutely. And yeah, we have a lot of work to do. The more that
that's your responsibility as Christians. At the end of the day, my responsibility at the end of the day during this time of crisis is to address the immediate needs of what's happening here. I'm pro-Palestinian. I just was speaking to Pastor Stephen Corey. I made sure he had money to buy food when he's in Bethlehem. My understanding of being pro-Palestinian is making sure that Hamas is not running the show in Gaza. Who wants terrorists to abuse and use people for propaganda. At the
Right.
end of the day, don't you want a free democratic leadership in Gaza to represent the people in Gaza? The same thing goes for the Palestinians in the West Bank. Don't you want a proper leadership that's guiding? Governance demands responsibility. It's easy to be part of a propaganda movement and just criticize all the time, but governance is responsibility. And the Palestinian leadership, over and over again, we have dealt with for peace, only to be rejected in kind with terrorism.
Right.
I guarantee you, you have a Palestinian leadership that's willing to have peace, and there will be compromises, but the compromises are minimal. Compromises on both sides. You can have two peoples living in this land side by side peacefully. Question is, does the Palestinian leadership want to do it? You can't speak to terrorists, but the Palestinian Authority is the Palestinian leadership for the West Bank.
Right.
They also have to go ahead and have that responsibility. So this whole thing of somehow equating whatever extreme woke is going on in the United States to what's happening in Israel, at the end of the day, we have 9.6 million people. 79% of the people who are citizens and residents of the state are Jewish. That means 21% of our citizens are not Jewish, with most of them being Muslim and 2% being Christian. And not only that, Muslims are part of the Supreme Court. In the last government, not this government, in the last government, the most powerful party that held everything together was the Arab Party. Well, I don't know of any Jewish elected member of the Hamas organization or Palestinian leadership organization. There are no Jews there.
Right.
We pulled out in 2005 from Gaza.
Right.
We provided everything. Their whole economy was there. The response was to burn everything down.
Right.
What we're seeing right now, and I'm sorry to go off on this, but understand this is the 12th day of the war.
Yeah.
I've been running around providing humanitarian aid. And I'm seeing people like the Union for Starbucks siding with terrorists. I'm hearing Free Palestine. You know what? Free Palestine from Hamas. What does this Free Palestine have to do with the state of Israel? If Hamas was in charge of everything, they should have made sure that they delivered to their people. Why use their dollars that they got from the international community to buy arsenal from Iran and Hezbollah?
Right.
I didn't realize that Free Palestine is okay with terrorism commanding that community. And the brutality that has happened on October 7th, which is literally our 9/11.
Yeah.
Is comparable to the Holocaust. No other time in history have we seen personally of the brutality of what people are doing. And this is what you're saying, Free Palestine. This is the leadership you're standing by. We're living in a topsy-turvy world. So Christians, if you're truly believing in your faith, well, that means you should also make sure that there's no Hamas running Gaza.
Right. Let me ask you this. This is something that I've heard not so much from, well, yes, from individuals, but even more scary than that is I've heard this in the past 2 weeks from churches during the liturgy, during the morning, during the prayer time. Essentially, churches and people not taking a stand for either side and saying phrases like, we're not taking sides today, death and fighting is bad, we're just going to pray for peace. And it's kind of this, all right, you feel like you've addressed the issue, you've prayed for it on Sunday, but you really didn't do anything. It's spineless, is what I would say. And that, I think this of the things that I had to talk about today is the one that just infuriates me and bothers me more than anything else. Because I would almost rather a church, for example, a pastor say, well, we're just not going to take any side on this for now. We're going to figure out what we believe. We'll address it next week. Then to kind of go halfway and say, oh, all death and fighting is bad, and Israel's made mistakes, and the Palestinians have made mistakes. We're just going to pray for peace. And it's just this superficial, spineless, not taking a stand for anything that's cloaked in this good terminology of praying for peace. How would you speak to that? Because I think the reason it deeply bothers me is because I feel like that type of sentiment is what led to what happened in the Holocaust. If you really look, but
it really comes from a perspective of somehow from a Christian point of view, I'm saved, I'm good. I can retire and live off my Social Security benefits here on earth until God takes me away. Somehow salvation got equated that I don't get involved in anything.
Yeah.
And this is the fleeting moment of Christianity. Christianity, specifically in the United States, is at a risk today. I think more you find more staunch Christians in Africa and the underground churches in
Right.
China than what you have in the United States, because simply the church has been quiet on a lot of things. Leave Israel for right now, just on a whole slew of things, not to rattle the boat in the congregation for fear of losing congregants, meaning
Right.
at the end of the day, losing the Sunday offering.
Right.
Well, at the end, if I read the book correctly, all the disciples were martyred because they took a stance on their faith. So when did
Right.
it become okay within Christianity to be on the sidelines in the bleachers to say, I'm going to see what's going to happen. I don't want to rock the boat. The whole point is that you're supposed to rock the boat.
Right.
Otherwise, how are you supposed to accomplish the Great Commission? So what we have is superficial Christianity being sort of like nothing else like Coca-Cola being marketed to Christians, and Christians are sipping this away, thinking seems to be okay. But it's all full with junk at the end of the day. I want Christians to be Christ-centered, because if you are, there's nothing for me to worry about, because you would have my back, because I'm your elder brother in faith. Even though I don't necessarily express the same theology as a Christian, doesn't take away from the family. And I don't know of any other faith community that shares the same scriptures as us than Christians.
Right.
Islam doesn't share in the sanctity of scriptures, not even the Hebrew Bible. So it started off with Jews. It was written by Jews. And the book is pretty much, if you really understand it, it's pretty much from a very perspective from a Jewish book. For some reason, Christianity, as Americanized as it is sort of similar to McDonald's. And I think that is because of the prosperity gospel
Yeah.
and the solely social justice gospels that are out there. So you have to pick and choose. I don't think you have to pick and choose anything. I think what's right has to be called what's right, what's wrong is wrong. And therefore, here's the clear example. When a pastor goes in and says, well, we want just peace. Well, this is the problem. There are people saying that peace means free Palestine, that it's okay to back up Hamas,
Yeah.
that's murdering Jews. That's how far the extension of a perspective of peace is,
Wow.
which is not rooted in anything in the Bible
Right.
or even in Christian theology. It's just trying to be part of a fad that has somehow been incorporated into American society right now with the extreme wokeism that's out there.
Yeah, that's so good. It's so interesting to me how it seems the lines are so clearly being drawn. Like you said, the extreme wokeism, the extreme, that whole thing that's going on.
Values of what's a man, what's a woman.
Yeah, all of that.
I didn't think today there was going to be a debate upon what's a man and what's a woman. I just didn't understand. Seriously, maybe old school, but I mean,
Right.
we understand what a man is. We understand what a woman is. We understand what a marriage is. I think most people are a little confused what marriage is. I'll give you my definition of what a marriage is. It is a woman becoming a wife, a man becoming a husband, and their souls are being reunited. It's not a contract.
Yeah.
Based upon convenience of intimacy or fame or money or whatever you feel the contractual agreement of the fleeting moment is about. It's a reunion of souls living a covenantal lifestyle to actualize God's kingdom on earth and bringing heaven to earth. But somehow marriage is even up for grabs in certain churches today. Gender is up for certain churches today. So there's more problems, I would say, in Christianity than ever before. And again, Israel is just a component of that.
Yeah.
But if the church is not straight with what they believe in, how do I expect? I can't expect a church to be there for me. And that's why I rely on this remnant within Christianity. That's why Bishop Robert Stearns is really a vital friend for me, but he's on the front lines with me. When he says we're not alone, I know he means we're not alone.
Right.
I can count on a Bishop Robert Stearns. I can count on Eagles Wings. I can count on people like you who've been reared and raised and nurtured in that. But if I'm looking at the average, Episcopalian, at the end of the day, seems to be run amok, or even a PCUSA person, I can go on in different movements. I'm not expecting anything from them because already we're starting off from the concept of replacement theology. Already we're coming from the concept of extreme progressive values that just are not in sync with the Bible. So it's going to be a remnant within Christianity, with a remnant of Judaism, to come together to be true witnesses of God, of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah, absolutely. What about this question? This is another one that I've heard a lot in the past week from Christians saying, I stand with the Jewish people spiritually, meaning, but I don't stand with the state of Israel politically speaking, and kind of drawing that line and separating those two things.
So again, I go like this. It's a cop-out.
Yeah.
It's being a coward. All right. So just be for what it is. I never heard anyone say to me, I believe in the spirituality of the United States, or I believe in the spirituality of the United Kingdom or Japan. That's where I am, but I don't agree with the politics of my state or my country. I mean, really?
Yeah.
It's like why is it? It's always Israel that has to go ahead and first say, we're not perfect.
Right.
Your country is perfect. I don't know why we start off with we're not perfect. We're a country. We're a government. It's run by human beings. It's understood trial and error thing happens. But the name of our military is called the Israel Defense Forces, not the Israel Offense Forces. We respond to what's happening accordingly. The technology is such today. If Hamas is shooting from a particular place, we know exactly where, and we pinpoint that missile to take out the terrorist who's harming me. Unlike Hamas, has no problem shooting thousands upon thousands of missiles,
right,
indiscriminately.
Right.
The missile the other day hit Bet Jala. Bet Jala is a place where Christians are.
Yeah.
It's under the palace. I'm just saying, it's like, it's in the area in the West Bank.
Yeah.
There are Muslims who are living in Tel Aviv. It's not only Jews that live in Tel Aviv. So all of a sudden we can be, somehow it's for me, it just does not make sense. We're living in a world that does not make any sense. So it's a cop out to say, I don't agree politically. Yes, there are going to be political issues that individual Christians are not going to agree with. But overall, as a state, there's freedom of expression, freedom of religion. Israel goes to the ends of the earth when they're in the military and doing these actions to try to ensure there is no collateral damage. It happens in war that you got no choice.
Yeah.
But Hamas is making it quite difficult to figure out how we're going to do this when they're using human beings, civilians, as human shields.
Right. Right. Which they do obviously intentionally.
Right. Yeah. Because they know that we're the most humane military out there.
Yeah.
In order to do what we need to do. And again, as long as if one day the Palestinian leadership can wake up and say, I want to live peacefully with Israel, we would be there. And the facts is that where the Abrahamic Accords proves that diplomatic economic ties can happen with previous countries that were enemies of Israel.
Right.
Okay. Remember, when the state of Israel was created, 800,000 Jews were exiled from countries under Muslim rule. And they found their way, 800,000 Jews from Middle Eastern countries came here to Israel. And many of those countries didn't have diplomatic ties until recently. So peace is possible. Peace was possible with Egypt. Peace happened with Jordan. And peace is happening in Morocco. And I find it quite fascinating that we're almost at the finalization with peace talks with Saudi Arabia. And Iran comes in, backs up Hezbollah and Hamas.
Right.
So peace is possible. Obviously, there are enemies out there that don't want this to happen.
Do you think, with what we were talking about, specifically the American church or the Western church, what is the root problem of this spinelessness and unwillingness to take a stance? Is it money? Is it comfort? Is it the fact you mentioned the underground church, places like Africa, even China? Is it the fact that we don't face the pressure of persecution, so we don't feel the need to take a stand? Do you have any sense of what, if you were going to say this is, I'm sure there's more than one, but what is the root cause of that?
For this? Okay, so let's understand this. I still believe that America is a Christian country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't feel that way for Europe. And the fact remains, look at on the Sunday service in Europe, most of the churches are empty. Great architecture, but completely empty.
Yeah.
The United States is the last beacon of where Christianity is for the Western church is concerned. But American consumerism has replaced Christian faith.
Wow. Yeah.
Or it's been fused with Christian faith. So it's like I schedule God in my time as opposed to being in his time in his amplified presence
Mm-hmm.
to allow my ego to be completely out of the picture and allow God to completely direct my life. I think Jesus said things you can't have Caesar and God at the same time.
Right.
I heard a verse about that once, right? So just saying that I think in this particular case, American consumerism has been fused with Christianity. I think it's sort of like I want this to I want to define who God is for me that makes my life the most comfortable, even
Right.
including my political outlook that could be contrary to biblical values. It's somehow we find the verse that justifies our perspective, even though that verse has been taken out of context to justify something that is against the Bible in the first place.
Yeah. That's so interesting, and I'm thinking here how different that mentality is from the Jewish mentality. I mean, your life is centered around essentially the schedule of God. It's not like it's not here's my availability this week, this month. No. It's like here's what God said, here's the feasts, here's Shabbat, here's these things that are calendarized, and my life submits to that. It's very different, and I wonder
100%.
if some of that disconnect from the Jewish roots of our faith has actually produced the consumer mentality in the church, or at least certainly enabled it.
Well, Ryan, you've been nurtured in this for the last 18 years?
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years. So you're on a higher level than maybe some of the people who are listening to this. So I want to reach the people who are just like being open to the conversation that we're having. And here's an Orthodox Jew telling Christians to be Christ-centered, but making sure that Christ-centered Christianity encompasses and incorporates and identifies with the identity of Jesus, of who he was and who he is from a Christian point of view.
Yeah.
And I think it does take an outsider to sort of do a smack in the forehead for the Christian out there to say, wake up and stop going with these fads out there. At the end of the day, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett doesn't define my daily life, but we seem to be caught up into this Hollywood, version of what people are aspired to. And the proof of it is Christianity is more illiterate than ever before, even though they have the most access to the Bible than ever before. Just go to Barna Research and they'll give you all the stats of how our young teenagers and young adults, once they leave their home and go into a college campus, most of them are leaving their faith. Well, then there's something wrong with the way people are raising. You can't outsource faith to a call center or even to a Sunday service. And look at a Sunday service. Most Sunday services here. I've been doing this for almost 23 years. I've been in every type of Christian church possible. The children are usually leaving when the pastor is giving the sermon. And in essence, yes, there's a little bit of value teaching that's happening for the youth. But if that's the only thing you're getting, you're not even getting what the pastor's message is, how do you expect them when they leave to maintain faith.
Right.
So I think there's a fundamental issue here. Like, the only reason why Abraham was elected that we have a biblical source for is we don't see Abraham submitting his resume to receive the covenant in the first place. And the answer comes to Genesis chapter 18, verse 19, where God says, I know that he will teach about me to the next generation. It's all about education, all about being educators. The highest level of service to God is educating the next generation. Well, how does that look? When we seem to be okay with having our kids in public school being taught. Well, I'll teach you a Yiddish word right now, Ryan. Schmutz.
Schmutz.
Yeah, schmutz. This is a good Yiddish word that will describe what's being taught in public school today, of all this fleeting values.
Yeah.
That doesn't represent the Bible, and we seem to be okay for our kids to be exposed to all of this. Parents are losing their rights to dictate their gender and all types of stuff that's happening. And again, so where's the responsibility of the Christian parents? You guys should go ahead and build cathedrals of Christian education schools out there so you can go ahead and impart the values. It shouldn't happen to someone at 27 years old to receive their born again moment.
Wow. What last question? See, I get drawn into this. We'll be here for 3 hours with you.
Okay.
But last thing, just along these same lines, not even one of the questions I sent you. What is the role of, we just did a whole podcast on this 2 weeks ago, my wife and one of her best friends who's a minister as well. What is the role of family in imparting those values to children? Our podcast that we did is we talked about how we as Christians will outsource the spiritual education of our children to the church. Send them to children's church. Okay, you guys teach them, send them back home. What is the role of family in a Jewish family in raising the children?
So we thank God, and you should know, Ryan knows this. I think Ryan knows this. I moved to Israel because my oldest one was turning 5.
Yes.
New York was unaffordable. Sending my kid to a religious Jewish school would be $15,000 a year.
Yeah.
Now, I could move to another Jewish community in the United States and have the tuition a little bit less, or I can go to Israel, and my tax shekels gives me the option to choose which school is best for my child. Okay, which you didn't have that choice in the United States.
No.
Only up until recently of school choice and allowing public tax dollars to pay for that. But we don't have a separation of synagogue and state. You're still debating the whole separation of church and state in the United States. But here in Israel, one of the major reasons why I made the move I did was my child was 5. He's going to go into school. What type of school do I want? How is it going to be affordable that I can go ahead and maintain my Jewish lifestyle and ensure his education? And he's learning Bible and all the rabbinic literature that has been developed in the last 2,000 years. He's learning that. But every week we're centered around the table for a Shabbat experience, which we don't watch TV. We're not on our iPhones. We're not looking at computers. My Shabbat meal is 3 hours because we're having a meal. We're enjoying the meal. We're getting to catch up with one another, but we're reviewing everything they've learned the past week.
Yeah.
And we're bringing scripture messages to the table. We're delving into that message. They're coming with me to the synagogue. We're going together. They're part of the synagogue service and not excused to go out somewhere. So they're part of everything. And because we're aligned with a biblical calendar and we're always coming together and we're speaking about themes of what redemption means and what does kingship mean? What does atonement and forgiveness? What does it mean? What all these things have representation of the biblical calendar, plus what's happening there being taught and during the week gives us the opportunity to just nurture them naturally.
Yeah.
It's not about my PowerPoint presentation and here's your motivational speech for the week. whether the congregation is listening or not. Often, I think pastors are trying to win a soul that might be a guest there for the Sunday than to provide manna
Wow.
for the congregation that's showing up every week.
Wow.
So if the church is superficial and at the home, there's not much reinforcement of what's going on in scriptures and discussing it, can't expect the kid to maintain their faith afterwards.
Right.
It's not the kid's fault. And I would also say sometimes right now, it's not the parents' fault either, because they are not being taught, they weren't taught properly when they were growing up. This is my thing. If salvation is not retirement, salvation means requirement and responsibility.
Right.
And for some reason, it seems like often what I hear is, I can't wait till Jesus takes me. And I'm like, what are you going to say to Jesus of what you did when you had this moment in your life and you said yes to Jesus? What did you do for him for his kingdom? How did sanctification enter into your life that this moment could be sanctified than the previous moment?
Right.
We have moments of sanctification, opportunities of sanctification every single day. You get up and you say, what we're going to do for God today.
Yeah. That's so good. Listen, we need to get you behind a pulpit. Next time you're in the States, you're going to be preaching. Let everyone know, just before we wrap up, how can they give right now financially to support either the Isaiah projects or the humanitarian aid, or if those are linked, how can they give to what you're doing?
Very simply put, go to www.theisaiahprojects.com/donate, www.theisaiahprojects.com/donate. Just understand what we're doing here. Again, as a Jew, my responsibility, I've said this to Ryan beforehand, covenant land comes with covenant responsibility. We know what it means not to steward covenant properly in this land. The Bible attests to that. We got kicked out twice from the land. We have this rare opportunity in the last 75 years to be a steward of this land. That means that we also have to take into consideration everyone that lives in this land. And that includes non-Jews, includes Muslims, and includes Christians. My heart, and what I have done for 23 years in advancing Jewish-Christian relations, my heart is for the Christians living in this land. So I help out specifically Bethlehem and Christians living in Jerusalem. God has put on my heart. So we help put food on the table for them. Single Ethiopian mothers that live in Netanya, that's where I live right now. But when crisis happens, something like this happens when we're dealing with a war, October 7th is a date will change forever in Israeli lives. Mm-hmm. And it means that at the end, when we're dealing with a crisis, we can't stand by, just watch the news, feel bad about the stories that are coming out. And faith means, I think there's a person named James, right? I heard about James, right? You need some type of action to affirm faith. Yeah, I heard about it.
At ORU, you heard about him once, right?
I heard about it. Right? So at this point in time, rhetoric is not needed. Action is needed.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on. Listen, man, we are with you. Our small crew here. We are trumpeting the message along with Bishop Stearns and others. You have friends, you have family, you have support no matter what happens, and we're getting the message out and believing millions and millions are going to understand and hear that message and just stand in support of Israel and stand for covenant is what it boils down to.
Bless to everybody. I'm going to ask you really to have everyone in their prayers, from our family to yours, really. And Ryan, I love you, man. I really do. Your wife and I and you all together working this. We know each other for so many years. I had an opportunity during COVID, like when Jersey was opening up.
Yep.
I came.
Yep.
I came and 4 hours. I stood 4 hours in that service. That's longer than the Jewish service. Just want to let you know. Okay?
That's right. You came to resting place here.
4 hours in the service. You guys the Spirit was flowing through that place.
And you hung in
I
there.
had to wait 4 hours to give a 2-minute speech. I just want to understand that, okay, Ryan? 4 hours to wait for a 2-minute speech.
But see, that's the power that a Jew brings. You only need 2 minutes. We need 4 hours
I
to
only
get to
need
that
2
list.
minutes. That's it.
Awesome, man. Thanks again for doing this, and we'll talk soon.
God bless.